Good evening, all you folks out there listening on the Edge Radio US, as well as all you beautiful people here on Facebook. It's me, I'm back. It's your Twisted Southern Horror Queen. I'm glad to see you guys. It's been a minute or so. Yeah, I got a few things popping up because it's been a while since I did a live stream. So it's giving me all kind of hints and tips. And yes, thank you very much. But it's good to be back. We're going to start out with a shorter version of the Twisted Southern Horror Queen show. Normally we do an hour, but we're not going to quite make that tonight. I got to start back slow. Like I said, it's been a minute. Hey, Michelle, good to see you. John, nice for you to be joining in this evening. My girl Susie over there in Florida. Leanne, nice to see you too. I've missed all you folks very, very much. Thank you, John. That's sweet of you. I'm still old and foul, but I'm here, live and kicking and screaming and all those good things. So first, as usual, got to give those shout outs to the sponsors. That's right, the Edge Radio US, racking up some new sponsors this year. Welcome aboard, Ooze Basic Motorsports. Mouthful right there, Ooze Basic. Yes, that's right, I'm pretty sure. Rednecks, we do tend to rename people, but I think that's right. You can find them at authorlyngibson.com, also on the edgeradious.com. Check them out. Great specials, great people, great prices if you're into racing, which I know you are. Also, welcome back again for another year. Racer Direct, glad to have you joining on board, as well as the Southern Outlaw Gassers, Uncle Jesse and the gang. We love you guys. Y'all are awesome. Also, Naked Wines, Rot Inc., Big Time Vapes, Coffee Shop of Heart. There's a ton of them. We're happy to have them as well. Hey, Karen, glad to see you, sweetheart. Yeah, definitely check out those sponsors at authorlyngibson.com. You can find them on the My Sponsors tab, as well as the Edge Radio US, where you can stream live or download the Android app. Definitely make sure you want to take that badass hot rock and roll with you. Also, check out Hot Rod's House of Power. They got a rock block every weekday for 1 hour. Solid Southern rock if you're into that, which who's not, right? So check them out. Tune in. Enjoy the tunage. Crank it up loud enough to make sure your neighbors are also enjoying it. Steve and Bev Martin, very good to see you guys this evening. I missed y'all as well. I was discussing with Glenn Harrison, the fearless leader of Hardcore Paranormal, about kicking the show back off. I'm like, there's a whole lot going on, but I miss you guys, and I really want to do the stream, and it seems like people are actually missing the stream. So, I don't know, be thinking of a couple things you you find some new stuff out. That's pretty cool. I enjoyed it. So tonight it's all about the Lalaurie Mansion. Don't know that I'm going to be going back to weekly streams, but definitely bi-weekly. Y'all keep your eyes on Facebook. I'll be making those announcements a day before the stream goes live, so you'll know when we're coming up. Thinking real hard about maybe doing New Orleans Vampire Legends. There's a couple really good ones out there. One of them that just really intrigued me for a very long time. I did a lot of research on him. So there's a wild teaser for you. Maybe we'll look into doing that. Y'all chime in. Let me know if you're interested in that as well. Also, do take requests. So if there's something else that you'd be interested in hearing about, hey, let me know. Give me a holler. Tyler, nice to see you. Yes, I know, a long time no see. I was hibernating. That happens down here when it gets cold in the south. We don't do that. There's my big brother right there, Glenn Harrison. Nice to see you. Brandon Bell, thank you for joining in, sweetness. William Russell, the angry artist, is in the house. Y'all check this dude's page out. We've been in a few cons together. He's got some fantastic work. You'll love his art. Ricky Wheeler, nice to see you. Central Kentucky misses me. I miss Central Kentucky as well. There's some mighty fine folks up there, and some pretty damn good barbecue too. Okay, so without further ado, oh, one other sponsor I forgot to mention. How could I have done that? Naked Wines. That's right, you drink enough Naked Wines, somebody's gonna get naked. Could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. You never know. All right, so I got that little bit of Merlot in. Now it's all about the Lalaurie Mansion. So you guys gather around, fix yourself your own adult beverage, kick out the kids, dim the lights, because it's time to get your scary on. All right, so there's no shortage of haunted legends and tales of vampires and pirates and even werewolves in the Crescent City. Now, that's New Orleans, y'all. If you up north and you're scratching your head, hey, Ed, nice to see you, sweetheart. But when it comes to bizarre, torturous, and just flat out terrifying, there's one legend that stands above them all. That's right. Tonight we're talking about the Lalaurie Mansion. So, now this joint is just under 200 years old, and it's still standing today at 1140 Royal Street. That's in the French Quarter, y'all. So, in 1832, Dr. Louis Lewis, if you want to be all formal and things, Lalaurie and his wife Delphine start building this monstrosity of a mansion. Now, Delphine was a high-strung tramp, so everything used in the constructions of her humble little abode had to be the finest and most extravagant materials on the planet. And you can bet your sweet ass that only the best of the best was used when it came to the designing and decorating of her home. Karen Butler, I love you, sweetheart. So these poor bastards were worked mercilessly by the Lalauries. Every tiniest little detail had to be perfect, even down to the hand-carved flowers and all of the imported mahogany doors. So the interior designers, they were also sent to all corners of the earth under the strict order that they better not come back without the absolute finest of marbles and granite and textiles. And yeah, it was just not an easy job to have. Hey Gavin, how you doing, my love? So no shocker here, but when the mansion was finished, it was way more extravagant than any other home in the entire area. So the Lalauries, which were more than flaunting their decadent lifestyle, were soon the talk and the envy of the Crescent City. They'd set a whole new standard for the elite, and that was before they even started hosting these lavish dinner parties. Yeah, you really had to be somebody to get an invite to one of these shindigs, too. So, before we get too involved in the story, let's talk just a little bit about who the Lalauries actually were and where they came from. You know, a lot of the legends talk about the things that happened in the Lalaurie Mansion, but you never really hear any of the backstory about these two. So, I had to dig into that, and that's where I actually learned a few things. So, Delphine was born in Spanish colonial Louisiana in March of 1787. Now, Daddy was the Chevalier Louis Bartholomew McCarty from the McCarty clan. You've heard that name before. Needless to say, this dude was loaded. And Delphine, yeah, well, she was pretty much used to getting everything that she wanted. Well, when she turned 13, she decided that she wanted Ramon Lopez Engel. Now, this dude was the second in command to the Spanish governor, and he was also in his mid-30s, but she still wanted him. So, 6 months later, they're married, but it was without the king's permission. See, they were just a little bit too eager, and they wouldn't sit there and wait around for the letter to get delivered and for the king to scratch his head for a while and say, yeah, it's okay, or no, I don't think so. They just went ahead and did it anyway. Needless to say, after that, Lopez gets busted down in rank as punishment. So, he and Delphine board this ship to go to Lopez's new post. And it ain't nothing glamorous either. This girl was going to have to rough it out in swamp country. So, yeah, I can see her swatting skeeters and walking around in the muck. That just didn't sit real well with Delphine, as you can imagine. So the ship that they're on was involved in some kind of undocumented incident, and Lopez dies unexpectedly and with no explanation. Well, a few days after that, Delphine gives birth to their daughter. In 1807, she decides she's going to remarry, so she hooks up with this dude named Jean Blanc. You've probably heard me say that name before as well, because this dude was an associate of Jean Lafitte. He's actually the one that delivered the letters back and forth when the president was asking Lafitte to enlist his troops and kind of help out in the war and all that good stuff. Yeah, that dude. So Blanc unexpectedly, or Blanc, excuse me, unexpectedly dies about 8 years after that, and of course, nobody knows what happened. Snail mail, big mistake. Absolutely. Now, let me give you just a little bit of clarity here, folks. The young doctor, he was neither handsome nor was he wealthy. Louis Lalaurie was characterized by the folks around there as this meek and mousy young man, and his pockets were lined with lint, not cash. But apparently, Delphine was into that type, so by 1826, they're all hot and heavy, right? Well, in August of 1827, she spits out a kid for him. Now, the marriage license that's still on file today at the St. Louis Cathedral shows that they didn't actually get married until 5 months after that. So, back then in the day, that was kind of a ghastly thing. That was a big deal. But, my new piercing is my old piercing, and it's fine, Jerry Robb. How's your new piercing? Jerry Robb is a freak, but we respect him because he is the man behind Hot Rod's House of Power, which we were just talking about. Visit their website to do some incredible work if you're looking at building a new project or restoring one that you've just got sitting around the front yard. That's the man to get in touch with right there. You can see his name in the comments. Enjoy that new piercing, Jerry. So, the honeymoon didn't last. Delphine's personal attorney sent several letters back to his employer in France that stated the two of them were fighting like cats and dogs and they were constantly separating. As a matter of fact, they were separating more than a Bourbon Street hooker drops her panties. He didn't exactly say that, but you get the gist. Anyway, Delphine had cash, so Louis kept crawling back, right? Well, after moving into the mansion on Royal Street, Delphine petitioned for a legal separation, stating that Louis was cruel and was often beating her. I'm not buying that one, folks. Not even a little bit. Because by this time, Delphine had already appeared several times at court. At least 3 times were documented. No telling how many more times she paid to have her name taken off of all the paperwork. And it wasn't for marital issues that she was going for. It was because it was common knowledge that she was physically abusing her slaves. She was doing it. Now, several notes made in some of these old court documents showed that she paid her way out of these situations, and it must be like paid up for a year or something, because things would happen after that, and the authorities, of course, would just turn their head when any new accusations went public. They didn't want anything to do with that. Well, there was also this common consensus among the locals that Delphine was a little bit on the mentally unstable side. And a lot of folks had actually witnessed this chick go from docile to batshit crazy in 2.2 seconds. And along with those insane mood swings came violent fits of temper. This ain't nothing like PMS, y'all. This is something that's for real. This chick was crazy. Anyway, poor little mousy Louie was probably running for the hills. And they ain't no hills in New Orleans, y'all. What they did tell us is that he was spending a whole lot of time in Plaquemines Parish. And he was supposed to be down there treating these folks with crooked backs, of course. But rumor has it he'd found himself a lady friend down there in those parts. Just face it, who in their right mind with a doctor's license would choose to practice medicine in a very poor and very rural area when they lived smack dab in the middle of New Orleans where all the wealth was. There was also screaming mad lunatic wife in the middle of New Orleans as well. So that explains why he was spending time away from home. Jesse Donaldson, nice to see you, sweetheart. Missed you. Okay, so now we got a better idea who these two lovely rays of sunshine actually were. Now, keep in mind that back in the day, the upper crust considered themselves a very civilized community, and normally they would not be seen in a household that still owned slaves. Well, of course, the Lalauries had plenty of them. She had had them her entire life. I'm sure it was a fairly new experience for Louis to have people waiting on him because he came from a very poor background and was still poor when he got there, at least till he married Delphine. But anyway, these guests that would come over to the Lalaurie Mansion were just so awestruck by all their wealth and their lifestyle that they just really didn't seem to have a problem being served and waited on by these slaves at that point. Hey, Kathy, nice to see you. Thanks for joining in. So the community was quite mesmerized by these two, because who wouldn't be, right? He's this successful young doctor, so they thought. And here's Delphine, which was said to be a very beautiful and highly intelligent woman, even though she was a little thrown off. Now, there was no doubt that the Lalauries had been accepted into society, but even after that, the rumors started to spread around. So it seemed that there had been some odd occurrences concerning Delphine and her slaves. Now, let's go back to when the mansion was first completed and they just moved in. This is when one of the first major occurrences went down. They say that this young slave girl leapt to her death from the roof. Now, the neighbor across the street was hearing all this commotion, so he starts watching through his window, and he sees all this madness going down from across the street. He saw everything up until the point where she jumped. The girl's name was supposedly Leah or Leia, and she'd been brushing Delphine's hair, and all of a sudden she hits a snag. Well, Delphine came unbolted, and the neighbor said that he saw Delphine chasing this girl down the hallway, swinging a whip at her. So Leah landed in the courtyard, and Delphine had her body thrown into an unused well. With all the other charges she paid her way out of, she didn't really need another appearance in front of the judge, so better to just kind of shove that body under the rug, right? She was already dodging more rumors that her slaves would just go missing from time to time. And some of the locals were actually claiming that they'd witnessed these bodies being removed from the residence under the cover of an early morning fog from the Mississippi River. Well, as fate would have it, the rumors would come to a halt, only to be replaced by the reality of the unthinkable atrocities that had been going on there at the mansion. Kelly Moore, nice to see you. Billy Baird, thank you for joining in. A whole bunch of new faces tonight. I'm glad to have you guys. We're going to try to do this a little bit more consistently. Please tune in to the Southern Horror Queen page here on Facebook and keep up with any new announcements and with scheduled things, and maybe check out some of my books and some of my blogs and all that fun stuff. There's all kind of creepy shit going on right here on this page. So on April 10th, 1834, this fire breaks out there. Now, the fire department responded immediately because the Lalauries were, well, the Lalauries, and every free hand in the community shows up to help put this fire out. In fact, there were a lot of judges and reporters and lawyers and folks like that on scene as well. Guess they were trying to get a few brownie points from the rich folks, being the Lalauries. Anyway, a lot of these folks were begging Lewis to let them go inside and free the slaves. Now, I read the exact quote. He actually made this comment to a judge, but there was a reporter standing right there next to him. And this isn't word for word what he said, but Louis, of course, knew what kind of shitstorm that would bring down. He didn't want them going inside the crib, right? So he responds with something along the lines of, y'all really need to mind y'all's own business. Well, at one point, it looked like this fire was growing out of control and there was no way it was going to be able to be put out. So several of these influential bystanders took it upon themselves to break down the doors and go try to get those slaves out. Well, shortly after that, they were successful in putting the fire out. And it appeared from the outside that the home just had some minimal damage, nothing really shocking. Hi, Robin. Nice to see you. Kevin, nice to have you joining in this evening. Thank you. I've missed you guys too. You know, like I said, it looks like there's just minimal damage there, but that shit was fixing to get really bad. Because, yeah, this is where it gets crazy. So, the firemen go in after the door's been broken down. And you got these other people all roaming around, and they're trying to grab people and pull them out. And they're, of course, insistent on inspecting the home to make sure that it's still structurally sound because these people are very wealthy and they don't want them to go back inside the house and the floor collapse or the ceiling come down on them or anything like that. They're actually trying to protect these fools. So everything's going fine with their little inspection until they get to the attic. And that's where they find the most gruesome discovery of all time. What they saw there that night brought New Orleans to its knees. Now, you know, there's been a few Mardi Gras since then that brought New Orleans to its knees. But this was really bad back in the day. So, when they get up there, they see that these walls were lined with slaves and they were all chained in place, some of them with their hands and feet, some of them at their neck. Some of them were stretched out by their wrists and their ankles and hung, stretching their extremities as far as they would go and probably a little bit more. Some of these slaves were found with their lips sewn shut. Some of them were hanging by their wrists and had their intestines tied neatly around their torsos. The most horrific of these discoveries were actually made in the very back part of the attic. Now, these slaves were said to have been the result of some very twisted ass medical experiments. Some of them had had their arms and legs broken, then reset to heal in really weird positions. And they kind of looked like human crabs, if that gives you a better visual. That was one of the quotes from one of the reporters that was there on scene that actually wrote an article in, I think it was the Daily Bee was the name of the newspaper back then in the day. So I'm going to Google that and actually read that article. But of course, wait, because there's more. Some of these people were found bitch was thinking. But yeah, there were also all kind of spare parts that were scattered around the floor as well. So I guess she was just keeping a full inventory up there, and she decided to do some mixing and matching. Bitch, that's called a quilt. You don't do that to people. You make a quilt like that. Anyway, everybody would have probably thought, and these people who first walked into this attic and saw the condition of these slaves probably thought, this evil bastard Dr. Lalaurie. Not so much. It wasn't him, y'all. He would definitely had to know what the hell was going on, but he wasn't about to screw over his cash cow either. So, yeah, it was Dauphine. We knew that already. She tormented and tortured the hell out of these slaves. Now, how do we really know that? The cook. The cook knows everything that goes on in a house, but this one here was well motivated. You see, the fire was actually the result of a failed suicide attempt. Dauphine had chained this female slave to the stove and never released her. This poor chick had a hole drilled in her head, along with several other cuts and scars from past disciplining sessions. And it was her that survived and told the authorities about all the crazy shit that had been going down in the Lalaurie Mansion. So the investigators come out and they, and of course they find body parts all over the place. There were body parts and bodies um, excavated from the courtyard. The surviving slaves, they reported that had been a great number of their peers had gone missing. And of course the macabre mob up in the attic, well, once those heads were counted, Delphine Lalaurie was known to be accountable for nearly 100 of the most gruesome murders recorded in history. So, Wanda and DW, nice to see you guys. I love y'all. Hope everything is going well. Living nightmare creatures. That's right, Ed Miller. So what happened to Delphine? Well, when word hits the streets, the shit hit the fans. The authorities again turned their heads, and by daybreak, when no arrest had been made, well, Delphine summoned her coach driver, and she and Louis and 3 of the adult kids escaped. But the community, oh yeah, they weren't going to let it go down like that. They were livid, upper crust included. They were all fixing to show their entire ass. So, definitely a air of oh hell no in the streets of the city that day. So this pissed off mob gathers at the mansion, and it was pretty much on. If they couldn't beat the hell out of the Lalauries, they were going to take it out on the house. I can see the logic behind that. So they go in, they storm the place, and they destroy everything inside this mansion, to include the cast iron railings, the mahogany doors, the imported wood floors. Yeah, this sucker was barely standing when they were done with it. Well, in the meanwhile, Delphine and her family show up in Mandeville, and they stay there until they got their shit together. And then they hauled ass to Mobile for a little while, and then they went up north to New York. Well, in June of 1834, they set sail for France, but their reputation had pretty much preceded them. There was a very well-known American poet that was also on board that vessel with them. William Cullen Bryant wrote in his journal that the other passengers were making Delphine cry the entire voyage. Poor little Delphine. In the meanwhile, Delphine's attorney sells what was left of her mansion and her slaves, and needless to say, there was a serious financial loss there. So Delphine had left the rest of her finances under the control of her son-in-law. Now, no doubt this dude is taking a ton of shit just simply because he's related to this crazy bitch, right? So he's being the good son-in-law, and for a while he sends her monthly allotment. But at some point he decides he's done with that. So Delphine starts borrowing money at these exuberant rates just to finance her lavish little lifestyle. Well, finally she gets so buried in debt that nobody's going to loan her anything. So she threatens to go home and take care of her business in person. Well, one of the daughters that had left New Orleans with her mailed a letter to the son-in-law in advance as a warning. And she was telling him that it wasn't going to be nothing nice when Delphine set foot back in the Big Easy, because she'd been sitting there for months plotting her revenge, and the rest of her family members that had stayed in New Orleans, they were going to be just devastated when she was done with them. Hi, Mike. Nice to see you. Hey, Casey. Good to have you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Feels good to be back. A little rusty, but I'm catching up. So, luckily for him and her other remaining spawn there, she never made it. That's right, Delphine died flat broke in a rental house in 1849. She was buried the very next day, but she only stayed there for a couple of years, because in 1851, she was exhumed and transported back to New Orleans, where she now lies in a crypt at St. Louis Cemetery. Also to tell you that that crypt did not belong to her. It's not like she bought it in anticipation of that being her final resting place. It was a remaining family member that was still there in the city that donated the crypt to this woman. So, this, as you can imagine, has got to be one hell of a haunted house, right? Definitely. Now, it's been investigated many times, and of course, there's a ton of documented activity there. So, almost immediately after the Laurie's hauled ass, tales of ghostly occurrences began to surface throughout the community. Folks were reportedly hearing the tortured shrieks of the Lalaurie slaves echoing from within the house when they'd walk by. Now, in the 1850s, the mansion was refurbished. That didn't really help shake the evil that the Lalauries left there in their wake, but what it did do was bring to light why folks had been hearing all the moans and groans coming from the house the second they left. Yeah, check this out, y'all. Right before the Lalauries left town, tragic, right? Yes. So the mansion changed hands several times. Each new owner would fall into ruin shortly after taking occupancy. So nobody really held on to this joint for more than just a few years at the most. And eventually, it got to the point where nobody wanted anything to do with this place at all. So, sometime in the 1870s, the mansion was divided into dozens of tenement apartments. And most of the occupants here were there were immigrant dock workers and, of course, their families. So these poor bastards had no idea of the history here, but it didn't take them very long to figure out that there was something going on right there. Now, the kids that lived there immediately began complaining about hearing these moans and groans and disembodied screams and dragging chains and scratching noises under the floorboards. Now, the parents thought it was just an overactive imagination because they're not hearing any of these noises. But that changed real quick one evening. See, one of these immigrant dock workers came home late one night and he's headed up the stairs to his apartment, and all of a sudden he sees this big black dude that's wrapped in chains standing in front of him, blocking his way from going up the stairs. But the big black dude just kept standing there. So the apparition dissolved into a cold mist, and by sunrise the next morning, the mansion was empty again. Every single one of these residents packed their shit and they got the hell out of there. Now, other people that spent the night there have claimed that they woke up in the middle of the night and they see this chick with long red hair glaring down at them. The spirit's also often reported to be seen by folks that are walking by on the streets below. They say that they can see her standing in one of the second story windows looking down at them, but it's as if she's looking straight through them as well. Some folks claim that that's actually the spirit of Delphine. More recently, one of the newer owners decided he was going to open a haunted pub there. Great idea, right? Well, didn't say open, but a few months. And right before he closed it, he actually bequeathed the house to the last documented spirit. See, there was a suite upstairs that had been rented to this old man, and he died just a few days after he moved in. Well, among his belongings was over $10,000 in gold. Today, his spirit is still haunting that mansion looking for that gold, y'all. There was also a murder, it's a little bit more recent, in one of those rooms in 1984, if I remember the date right. I didn't write it down because there weren't a whole lot of details about it, but you gotta think that guy's probably still hanging around too. Anyway, in the mid to late 19th century, the Lalaurie House was serving for a school, or as a school for girls. And of course, that didn't last very long either, because shortly after they opened and got everything settled, there were several accounts of these 8 or 9 year old girls running up to their teachers in hysterics, screaming and crying. And when they rolled their sleeves up, the teachers were seeing scratches and bruises on their arms. Well, of course, these teachers are asking these little girls, well, who did this to you? every single one of those children responded the same: that woman. Other owners through the years have lost their health, their sanity, and of course their wealth along with it. One wound up dying in an asylum, and another one falls into a coma after a bar fight. And then the most famous owner of all, Nicolas Cage, purchased the home just after Hurricane Katrina. And a few years later, as we all well know, he lost his home in a bankruptcy that also stripped him of all of his possessions here in the New Orleans area. Today, the current owner is a Texas energy trader, and he's using the mansion as a weekend home to entertain his clients and friends. Well, we wish him the best of luck with that. I actually like to talk to that dude because there's got to be some crazy shit going on in that house. Hey, Glenn Culbertson, good to see you as well. Okay, so as promised, short show. Not quite an hour. It's going to take me a little while to build back up to that, and probably by the time I do, it's going to be time for another surgery. So we're going to try to do this bi-weekly for now. I'd love to get your input on anything that you would like for me to do a little research in, maybe do a live stream on. Chances are I might have already done that research because I've been at this for a very long time. I think I've been streaming for about 5 years now. That's a long time. Most people don't do consistent podcasts for that long. So there's a whole lot of history in my inventory. So anything that you'd like to hear about, let me know. You can message me here at Southern Horror Queen on Facebook. Definitely check out authorlyngibson.com where you can look at all the sponsors, check out some pictures from past events, read a little bit about my novels and all that kind of cool stuff. And my blogs are also there as well. I try to put one of those out once a week just to give you guys something juicy to sink your teeth into on weekends. And maybe in case you missed your friendly neighborhood creepy chick. John, that was a good one. Thanks, Lynn. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. Thank you, Glenn. I'm getting all kinds of love over here in the comments for all you folks tuning in on Edge Radio. I'm sorry you can't see those, but you can always jump on Facebook, rewatch the video. You can go to authorlyngibson.com. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I try to get most of my live screens up there. There's all kind of crazy stuff on that YouTube channel. You might enjoy it. Check it out if you get a chance. If you're bored and don't have anything better to do. In the meanwhile, you guys take it easy. It was really cool seeing all you guys again. I missed you very much. Share the show. Share the website. Share the Facebook page. All that stuff. Help get me back out there. Got to promote those sponsors because they're good to me, and you guys are good to me as well. All right, folks, y'all have a wonderful week and an even better weekend. Send me those messages. I want some requests from all you creepy kids out there. Love you guys. Y'all have a good one.